I trained in New York City, and I mean, just being alive, right? Being an adult, you would always see these things. And I was training in New York City, and I remember people would be talking about, oh, you know what, that apartment sold for blah blah blah. Back then, they bought it for, I don't know, $200,000 or $160,000, and it sold for $220,000. You would hear about those things, so that kind of bug was planted.
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Ballara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today, I'm here with Dr. Sanjay Sharma, a real estate professional and visionary investor who's making waves in LA and the Southeast multifamily market. I'm going to leave it there because your background is kind of amazing. I love talking to other medical professionals, but I definitely like to let the guests, sort of tell it in their words. And I know we're both in Southern California, so I think there'd be a lot of cool things to talk about. But first, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it, and excited to talk to you.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's awesome to be here. Awesome to see another Californian. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Great. Well, tell us your background. It's pretty varied, and I want to kind of how it all ties together and all
Yeah,
of that.
sure. Yeah. So like you said, we're both medical professionals. Our backgrounds are medical professionals. I'm a practicing full-time hematologist, oncologist in Orange County in Southern California. I think that's kind of what you're referring to. Prior to med school, I was in public health. I was in epidemiology. I've been in practice for 18 years. I've lived all over the country. And then I'm a real estate investor and a syndicator, and a strong proponent for protecting physician moral injury, holding back from physician burnout, and a strong proponent of oncology and research.
Awesome. Can you talk about I just like people to I think a lot of people don't understand what goes into becoming a specialist in any medical field. And I know we're going to talk about real estate for sure, but I think there's some I think it just shows certainly a body of work and a commitment to excellence and willingness to sort of really just stick it out, kind of for the long haul to accomplish the things that you want to. So I think, and obviously I think that can relate to real estate as well, but I just want you to maybe tell listeners a little bit about sort of what was involved, your background and all of that, like, at, the years and everything, because I have an idea, but to be honest, I don't know exactly what mine was. I don't know exactly, what yours was like.
Yeah, so you're asking me to kind of go into details about what it takes to become a subspecialist, myself being a hematologist and oncologist. And you hit on a few points. The title of what you do, you kind of have to know your why in terms of why you go into this specialty. Two, you talked about kind of the academic aptitude that's needed. Three, and you talked about we'll say discipline, kind of the rigor that it takes to get to where I'm at. So in terms of years, so after bachelor's degree, so after 4 years of college, you go to medical school. So med school was 4 years. And then for me, I chose to go into internal medicine. If that's an internal medicine residency. So you're no longer in school, you're training in a hospital situation, and that was 3 years. And then after that, I chose to do subspecialty in both hematology and oncology, which is an additional 3 years. So altogether, in terms of training, before I was a full-fledged doctor on my own, after high school, it'd be 4, 8, 7, 10 years. And then you're actually a physician. You get your MD degree after med school. So that was 4 years of college, 4 years of med school. and then you're actually an MD. So I've been an MD since last century, since 1999. So I'm a century old. But the other things I think you're talking about, okay, fine. It's just, I mean, quite frankly, it's just a number of years. I mean, for anyone listening to this, obviously it depends on your age, but my job started here in Orange County when I was 2005. We had our first son, so I was 33 years old. So for everyone, what happened between you were an adult and 33 years, not a whole lot. I mean, in terms of, so when you have the time, when you have the energy, when you have the vigor, that's when you do all this kind of stuff. And it does take discipline. I mean, we really did study all the time. We really did have sleepless, nights. I really was in the hospital for 36 hours. All that stuff is true, but it's just kind of what drives you. I'm passionate about oncology. I love the research. The way I practice now is completely different. The way we can help the patients now is, night and day difference. It's just an amazing, amazing field. And so that's what brought me to it.
Yeah. That's a great point, that sort of technology advancements. I mean, I think people talk a lot about it in the outside, even something simple as the advancement of cell phones, things like that, what we can do from a business standpoint leveraging tech. But the same thing has happened in the medical fields. And sure. It's just remarkable to see, kind of what practicing medicine was even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that compared to today. So it's pretty amazing. But I did really want to kind of highlight that, just the commitment that it takes to get to the level that you're at just in the medical profession. And then where did kind of real estate fall in there? Spending all, and because people ask me this question too, it's like, well, how does it kind of hit you? Where do you get into, and how did you get going?
Yes. So there's a few influences. So there's kind of the economic, the financial influence. I mean, I trained in New York City, and I mean, just being alive, right? Being an adult, you would always see these things. And I was training in New York City, and I remember people would be talking about, oh, you know what, that apartment sold for blah, blah, blah. Back then they bought it for, I don't know, $200,000 or $160,000, and it sold for $220,000. You would hear about those things, so that kind of bug was planted. I grew up in my family was not into real estate. They had horror stories about owning a condo and it kind of going kaput. My in-laws have been very big proponents of real estate, and so I didn't kind of know how to marry the two. And I actually became an LP probably about 12, 13, 14 years ago, and had no idea what I was doing. I sat in, it wasn't a conference call back then. You would actually be sitting in a room and talking about this deal. And I'm like, I don't get it. Like, what do you mean I put down this much money and the money grows? Like, I understood checking accounts. I understood savings accounts. I knew how I never understood stocks. I still don't, but I get it. You put money in and you make money eventually. And they're like, okay, put money in as long as you don't mind losing that money. And I was like, son of a gun, that sounds horrible. I don't have any money that I want to lose, but everyone else is doing it, so I'll put a little bit in. And that became, and this was a different type of deal. So now 13, 14 years later, I'm getting 30% returns on it. But I put, this much in, so who cares? But that was kind of cool. And then I did another limited partner, and I got a phone call or an email, and it said, hey, we're exiting the deal. And it's only been like a year and a half. I'm like, oh God, I lost all my money, probably like got hit by lightning. They're like, no, we sold it and you're gonna get like an 80% return. And my jaw dropped. I was like, holy cow. And then we started buying our own real estate, and you'll know all these areas in Southern California. So we bought a duplex in Long Beach. And I was like, oh, wow, there's a garage. I bet you there's a way we can make money on it. We built that into a triplex, and someone, actually a military vet, came with a 0% VA loan. It was amazing. And we sold it for a 40% profit. I was like, whoa. And then exchanged that into a triplex in Costa Mesa here in Orange County, triplex in Costa Mesa, a fourplex in Inglewood, and just with Southern California rents, those places were renting for under 1,000, and with some rehab and one of the buildings we built some bedrooms, I was getting rent close to 3,000. And so we exited those. So I went in, I about 3.5x my money in less than 2 years. And then that brought me into the syndication world, because I said, you know what, I'm not going to be satisfied in terms of hitting all my freedoms just with duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. And that's when I entered the syndication world. So we've done syndications in LA, and we've done syndications in the Southeast and Atlanta. We still buy smaller properties. We bought a deal recently in Long Beach, and we keep going from there.
Yeah. But didn't someone tell you you're not supposed to invest in real estate in California? Isn't that's the rule? You'll never make any money in California as a real estate investor. It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing to me that people have this like picture of California that don't live in California. And there's some people that live in California and you're like, oh, I live here because I love it, but I don't invest here. But it's just a different market. It's just like any other market, right? It's like people invest in the Southeast for a reason. People invest in LA for a reason. Like it's just a different kind of role in your investment portfolio. And it always makes me laugh when there's all that talk about don't do it in California. And it's just like, I don't know, seems like a great place to me. So when you how did you get introduced to syndication? I know you were an LP, so you kind of started on that side. How did you make that transition from LP to GP then?
Right. So that's all through networking and getting to know people and recognizing what you can do. So, you mentioned earlier, I'm a doctor, so we love to read and we are super analytical. So, I mean, for years I've been reading. I've consumed thousands of pages of books, thousands of hours of podcasts, and it is easy to do. I mean, you can listen to it in the car. You have right. at night you're reading all this kind of stuff. So I've always wanted to do it, and it was just a matter of getting out and meeting people and networking. And I actually hired a coach. I got mentoring on it. And it wasn't, and I've been afraid of doing that before. It's like, why do I need to pay someone, or why do I need to kind of meet all these people? And by this time I had my own meetup group. We have a meetup group in Orange County, and I had invested, but I think that's just kind of what pushed me. And going back to medicine, we talked about subspecialty. It takes, practicing medicine is a multi-specialty type of service industry. Patient comes in, they may need a surgeon, they may need an oncologist like myself, or a kidney specialist. And likewise, in terms of doing a syndication, or there's multiple roles that's involved. It's just not one person. And then when I'm sitting there listening to my podcast and reading those books, it's just me and just my mind and my capital, but it just takes everything else. So once I got into mentorship, once I got into masterminds, once I had a coach, that's what got me to that level. That's what got me to find partners, and really encouraged me to do the things I wanted to do.
Yeah, it is. I think one of those scenarios of, well, I'm sure you have been experienced or have experienced this, but one of the things that a lot of people talk about, sort of on the podcasts, in the books, all of that. And it's like, you need to go out and find people that have money, but they have a job, that they don't have time to be in real estate. And so that's going to be your ideal investor and all of that. And they always point to doctors, right? Doctors are the people. That's who you want to target as investors. And then, but like, who better to talk to other doctors than a doctor about, kind of this vehicle? So I'm sure that's a big part of kind of what you're doing is educating, providing opportunities, kind of having these conversations with other doctors. I have found it in the veterinary world that it's pretty infrequent that people know about, kind of syndication and what's involved.
Mm-hmm.
How has your experience been in, I would say human medicine, but
Human.
yeah, you probably don't put the human before it, but yeah,
We'll call myself a human doctor. I like
yeah,
that.
exactly right.
That's great.
Yeah.
No, it's a. I mean, it was like my description earlier when I did my first LP. I had no idea what was going on, but so everyone knows real estate, right? Everyone is living somewhere. Everyone knows that real estate goes up in money, but it's like what you're saying. No one. It's only a few that recognize that most of these buildings out here are owned by kind of normal people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily like, I mean, pick whatever building. It's not owned by the gigantic industry. Like, the Coke building, well, maybe the Coke building is owned by Coke, but these are buildings that are purchased through syndications, and it's not a familiar place. Secondly, you talked about Southern California. So everything here in residential is $1 million plus. So when we think about real estate, we think about big hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the concept that you can invest as in $50,000 or $100,000 and to be part of a group that's taking down quality product is kind of unusual, especially when you think about it in a private equity world, as opposed to your accountant or your financial counselor may be offering you products, but those kind of seem far out there, kind of Wall Street, kind of big stuff. But it's a lot of people like you and I who put these deals together, who have the expertise, who have the networks, who understand the numbers and understand how to operate a deal where you can bring colleagues and friends and families and other investors of similar type. And you were correct in pointing out physicians. My investors are other physicians, also high net worth executives. So we have a relation. We're kind of like the same kin, the same human kin, if you will, that we can invest together. Yeah, but it's a novel concept to most of my investors. And so there's education involved, and then there's also, most importantly, there's trust. I mean, whoever's investing in me's got to trust me. Who's ever investing in you has got to trust you. There's a trust and the expertise to accomplish these deals.
Yeah, 100%. And I kind of like what you just said, saying here we are in Southern California, the price of real estate generally, really, truly, it's like you probably, the low end is $1 million. I mean, you can find something that might be below that, but you're probably going to have to fix it up, that kind of thing. And so, people can get involved in real estate, and especially if they're, as you said, people know real estate can make money, but a lot of times they think, I got to buy that duplex. I got to, whatever it is, they have to do the thing. And especially here, that probably means they're going to have to buy something. And, if you're talking duplex, triplex, quad, like something like that, it's going to be over $1 million. Sure. And so now they've got to come up with even more money. They've got to manage it. And so, putting that $50,000 into a syndication is I've never heard anyone put it this way, but like, that's almost like a savings. Right. Mm-hmm. And what you're saying is a good point. If someone is interested, this is a way for them to get involved with actually maybe a little bit less money than if they were to buy, their very own property. So it's a really intriguing point. And I think that the other thing that comes with it is they don't have to do the work. They have to do the work to know the sponsor and trust them, as you said, but they don't have to manage, they don't have to take time away from, sort of whatever it is that they personally or professionally, enjoy doing. And so it's a way to put their money to work. And, you pointed out right at the beginning, you said as an LP, this is a place that you can lose money, but that is the case in literally every single investment. You can lose money in the stock market. You can lose money in real estate. So it's kind of, I feel like, very eloquently, you have put a lot of the objections to investing in syndications, investing passively, sort of to rest, because putting those in perspective against other things. So I really love the perspective that you did present there. Um, what's your what tends to be your role? What do you like to focus on within the syndication? As you said, it's a team, likening it
Yeah.
to the medical team, but what's your place on that team?
Yeah. So it's so important to say that, like, what is your role in the team? And you hear this all the time, right? You hear this when people talk about business, you hear this when people talk about real estate. And it's not as simple as it's not a simple process when you're going through it. So even think back to your experience when you are getting yourself involved in real estate. There's so many avenues. Just think about, like, when you went through escrow and, like, one of the first deals you went through, you're like, what? Like, I need to go either this document and that document. You're talking to your lender, then you got some inspector. Someone's like, okay, we're going to look in the sewage line. You're like, what the heck's a sewage line? Well, what's going on? What do you mean there's a rat in there? Okay, fine, but what does that mean? There's trees growing into it. So, but there's each aspect of a deal someone likes. Like my partner I have a few partners, but my partners like to do some things that I don't necessarily like to do. Like I like to do what we're doing right now. Like, I mean, I love to talk to you, and I would, love to get to know people and understand what their interests are. It's actually the same thing with being a doctor. I'm an oncologist. I really get to know my patients and know their families and all that kind of stuff. So I like doing that. So what does that mean in terms of real estate and in syndication? Well, that's investor relations. That's getting to know your investors and who they are and what their interests are. That's capital raising. When you talk to a investor and you talk to them about what are their interests in investing, what are their goals, what are they looking for, and then they come and they invest in you. That's broker relationships. I love talking to random brokers and networking with people. And now in our global industries, sometimes those conversations, I'm talking to someone in India or the Philippines or just kind of like, everywhere. In fact, I was talking to underwriting team in India yesterday. We had a meeting. So that's really my strong suit. And the other thing is I love to speak. I love to public speak. That's like my favorite thing. It's like there's caffeine in me. If I'm up on stage, I'm good to go. I'm not one of the guys who's like, okay, I need a drink before I get on stage. I'm like, no, I'm good. Just shine the lights on. Here we go. I'm ready to perform. So that's my strong suit. And so then I'm out there meeting the brokers, looking at the deals. I don't like to get into the nitty gritty of underwriting. I don't like to get into the nitty gritty of asset management. I like the thought process. I like listening to someone, my designer, saying, hey, you know what? We can do this with this building. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. That's a great idea. Have you thought about putting a window here? I'm like, no, I didn't. That's awesome.
Right. Right.
So that's my strong suit is getting to know people, being able to speak, thus being able to garner relationships with brokers, and bringing in deals, and also bringing in capital and having that investor relations.
Yeah, it's such an important role on the team. At the end of the day, in a syndication, I think the idea that we all try to subscribe to is investor first. And so that investor relationship role and the capital raising role is so important. And again, I like the sort of, I guess, reference to it being like your patients, in the sense that, you're talking to them, you're more importantly probably listening to them and finding out, kind of what are their pain points, what are they looking for, even if they can't necessarily tell you, which I think is a big part of medicine. My patients specifically literally can't tell me, but that's it, right? That's the idea, is kind of trying to assess a situation and know where you can help, right? And what's the, what's service, you can provide for them. So I think that's very cool. What's your I know you're in LA and you said the Southeast, right? What's kind of the portfolio look like now, kind of as we stand, and what are your goals, sort of moving forward?
Yeah. So what's my vision of what we have? So we have 250 units down in Atlanta. Out here in Southern California, we have 12. We have 12 units here. So the goal is to grow this. We are looking in other geographical areas. By default, we're always going to be looking at properties in LA because we live here. But we're growing in Atlanta. That's one of our target markets, and we're actually targeting Indiana and possibly partnering on some deals in Indiana. Yeah. And then, so where it grows. So my company, Exponential Capital Investments. So our goal is, we don't necessarily have a numerical goal. I mean, I think we all, I suppose we all have certain visions that we aspire for. My vision is in terms of my investor. I want to have a nation. Our meetup is called Physician Real Estate Nation. So I want a nation of physicians who have the freedoms that I search, financial, time, geographic, to have a generation of doctors who are not burdened by finances, and they can just be doctors. That they don't have to play by the same rules that we play by now, but they can practice the way that they want to practice medicine. So my goal isn't necessarily a number per se, but is, how do I make my investors financially free? And how many products is it going to take in order to get them to that point? So that's really my goal. It's there's some intangibility to it, right? Because I can't really measure that for everyone, but that's what I hope to bring.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great way of looking at it. I think certainly having objective goals, people put it in unit count or assets under management and things like that. I understand the point behind that, but if you're really sort of impact driven, it's those numbers become a little bit less, not that they're less concrete, but they don't apply to everybody that you're trying to help, right? Like some people, it doesn't matter necessarily how many units or what, it's more how many people can you actually help. So I think this is a really good point to transition into the first question of the questions that I like to ask every guest, which is related to the name of the show. And you've touched on this a little bit, but I want to give you the chance to expand if there is more there, as far as what is your why and kind of the driving force behind, what you're doing. And you've got a successful career as a doctor. So you've now, looking to double down and be successful in something else, but sort of what pushes you?
Yeah. So people talk about, I'm not a boating person, but people talk about that lighthouse that you're going towards, right? That you're in a ship and you have to adjust your ship to kind of keep moving in that direction, to that lighthouse or that vision. And so, my vision are the freedoms that that I'll have one day for myself and my family. The financial freedom where I'm not burdened by finances. The time where I could spend time in doing a lot of the interests that I like, and spending time with my patients, geography from anywhere, and then vitality. I want to stay strong. I want to be healthy. I want to have that longevity, and that pushes me. And then I truly mean what I said. I mean, I want all my physician colleagues to have the same, and I have the ability to bring it to them, and I have the ability to teach this to other people. And so that's what pushes me. And that's really what my why is. And then again, like I talked about, and like you're describing, all of this is an evolution in process. Like, where are you in terms of your life? Do you have young kids? You have older kids? You have no kids, or kids or not? My kids are going to be going to college soon, so it's a different viewpoint and activity level that's needed for me. But how do I continue feeling kind of that inner sense of mindset vitality? And real estate is an avenue that you can do this, and so that's what I'm moving towards.
Yeah, I love that. And it is an evolution. I mean, I think before I even called it my why, it's like, it's sort of ironic that I have a podcast called Know Your Why, because I didn't even know it was really called that probably 4 or 5 years ago, or I didn't have a name to put, but you do have different drivers in your life, right? It's like you go,
Sure.
What you mentioned, kids, that's certainly one thing. I think a lot of people that come from some background of struggle, whether that's poverty, financial struggles as a child, whether that's addiction struggles, whatever the case may be, any of those examples, I think in a lot of ways, your first why might be getting out of that, right? Like getting away from whatever. But then you know, unless you just give up once you cross that first milestone of sort of erasing those issues, you're going to have that evolution. And I think it,
Yep.
ultimately, most of the time it evolves to impact. I think that's what I have noticed from guests on the podcast. It's what I've noticed from going to some of the conferences and hearing the people speak that have been in the industry, and they're well beyond financial freedom for themselves, right? They know they're set, they know their family's set, and now it's like, well, I don't feel like stopping. What do I do now? How do I make a difference in the world? And so I think that's it's really cool to see and hear about people's kind of the evolution there.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, there's really no finish line. Like, it's not like we all have aspirations depending on what you want to do. So say in sports, you want to, win a particular championship, but you don't necessarily win that championship and say that's it. I mean, you may not continue in that sport or whatever, but you're always going for something else. And for a lot of people, you know what, they can say, this, why is this doctor even talking? He's already made it. This guy's, a doctor in, Southern California. He can go to the beach every day, but there's not a finish line. You just, there's something else. You want to keep going. There's more. We're put on this world for just to do different things and expand our minds and go explore. Yeah. And that plays a lot into it.
Yeah, completely agree. I think part of what has been exciting for me in real estate has been growth in a new area, like personal growth, learning more, just kind of another thing to push me, because you do spend a lot of time getting to the specialist level in whatever medical field that you're in. And then eventually it's not that you're not still learning anything, but once you sort of start to reach a peak, then it's not, you don't have those same challenges. And so it's good to have something else to kind of push you forward and continue to have, sort of personal development. So I think that's a big part of it. It has been for me. Yeah. I didn't even realize that until I sort of did it. And I was like, oh, wow, yeah, this is stimulating. This is exciting, that kind of thing. So
it's your wisdom. Yeah. Some people call it white hair. It's wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. If I had hair, maybe it would be more white, but that's someday. So my second question for you is kind of sort of in the other direction. Tell us something about yourself that it isn't common knowledge, special skill, a hobby, just something to let listeners know you better, kind of that you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, sure. So I would say I have I'm gonna talk about my family. So I have a background. My grandfather, we're Indian. I'm first generation Indian. My parents immigrated here. So my grandfather was a very special person. He was a freedom fighter, which is something that I'm very proud of. Yesterday was actually India's Republic Day. So he played a big role in that. So he was a freedom fighter. He was alongside Mahatma Gandhi. He tells a story that when Gandhi was shot, he was at that particular place for a gathering, and he fell right in front of him. So he was one of them who carried him. So that carries that kind of legend, that legendary. I don't want to call it legendary status, but that's always held true to me, and kind of how I live my life and aspirations that I shoot for, and so there's a lot of things that he does that I try to mimic, and I can see multiple members of my family mimicking.
Amazing. That's amazing. It's so nice to have that role model, or that sort of hero figure that's within your family, right? Like to have someone that really you can almost view them as sort of larger than life, because they were so accomplished, and so that's super cool. Thank you for sharing that. When people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn every day. So just find me at Sanjay Sharma MD. I'm also on Instagram, not so much in terms of the real estate side, but I'm Hemonc Live. That's more clinical stuff, HEMEONC Live. My website is my company's Exponential Capital Investment, and the website is excapinv.com. And by all means, reach out to me. I can hit the contact on my website. You can message me on LinkedIn, and I guarantee you I'll respond to you.
Awesome. And I can personally attest to that.
That's how we met, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. A final question for you.
Yeah.
What is a piece of advice you would give to someone who wants to get started in real estate? And you can kind of take this in whatever direction you want, whether it's passive, active, as a joint venture, whatever it might be. What would you tell them to get them started?
Yeah. I'm going to be very generic, which probably, well, it does help. Is it's your podcast. You got to figure out what you're looking for in terms of why, and whatever that path is, whatever that lighthouse is, then you kind of back up in terms of what real estate assets could get you into that and what is available to you. Because once you figure that part out, everything is out there. There is someone who is an expert in anything that you're interested in. You want to flip house, you want to do single family, multifamily, self-storage, whatever it may be, land. I guarantee you there's people who are so anxious and so excited to talk to you and to meet you. Look what you're doing. You're clearly excited. You talk to all of us bumpkins here, just putting us on podcasts and stuff. But we're all out there, and we are so easy to talk to. And then that's when kind of the magic happens. That's when you're saying, okay, I'm reading a book and I'm trying to understand. Everyone reads Rich Dad Poor Dad. In fact, I'm kind of mentoring someone right now, and I said, okay, did you finish it? Did you read it? I gave it to her a couple of days ago. I'm like, you haven't finished it yet? You're not fired enough. I read it 30. The first day you picked up the book.
This is a rite of passage. Read this purple book first, and then you can learn everything else.
Right. And then and it's that meeting someone, and then finally just getting the guts of just buying something. It doesn't matter what the heck you buy. You just get involved, whether you're doing an LP investing with someone like me or you, or you're buying your own property. Even if it's just like a god awful property, it just gets you in there, and it's just a feeling that'll just keep driving you.
Yeah. It's hard to do one deal. It's hard to do one real estate deal and be like, no, that was good. You're either going to hate it because something didn't go right, but you really should use it as a learning lesson if that's the case. Or you're just going to be like, well, this is cool. And you're
for sure.
Can I do it again? Can I get bigger with that? So I think great advice. I think, you need that why, because there will be times when it's hard, but
for sure. Yeah.
But for sure, like I said, like finding someone who's doing it, because there's so many ways to get involved in real estate. It's crazy all the different things you could possibly do on, active, passive, whatever. There's just so many asset classes. There really is truly, infinite ways to get involved. And so there's, and the knowledge or the information is so available too. You can, we both podcasts, books, mentorships, YouTube. There's so much available to you that you just have to want it, and then it's there, and then you can go.
Yeah. And both you and I are stressing is just you got to do action. Yeah. I have definitely, and I know you've met people they're like, oh yeah, I've been reading forever. I've been in 17 mentorship groups. I set 45 goals, and then, okay, that's great. Awesome. What have you bought? Well, I haven't pulled the trigger. Just pull the darn trigger. Just get something. Right. It's all good after that.
Figure out where you can make a mistake and handle it too. Start there if that's what you need to do, or start as an LP, invest with someone that you trust has done it, and then learn there. Learn, ask questions, be a part. There's really virtually infinite number of ways to actually get involved in some way. So super cool. Dr. Sharma, Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your story. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate your time very much.
Oh, you're totally welcome. I love what you do. Keep doing it. It's great.
Thank you. Folks listening, I know you're going to get a ton of value out of this. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can get more great guests like Dr. Sharma. And thank you all for listening.
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Ballara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.